How much did the Eaton fire impact the local economy in its immediate aftermath, and now a year later? We're clearly seeing a slowdown in industries in that region. We heard the governor say we're going to turbocharge everything, but if I'm not mistaken, the governor made that same promise right after the fire.
I want to be clear to start with. We have the same problem in every place in the country that has major disaster events like this. It's the same thing. So let's do some numbers here. 13,000 plus homes and residential properties that burned down. $7.6 billion in insurance claims already submitted from that fire. And overwhelmingly, roughly 90% of that is residential. But the other cost that's really hard to get our arms around and that we struggle with is we talk about the damage to structure, but the continuity of the businesses and the residents not being there or being displaced has a cost too. So when we look at these numbers, the $8 billion is nowhere near what the actual economic impact is.
Exactly. So just how bad is it? And you talked about these families. I have a friend whose family wasn't burned out, but they can't move back in because of all the smoke damage, and their family is scattered to the wind. I mean, it's been a brutal year for them, and multiply that by 13,000 families.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this with Katrina, New Orleans, with Irma. My parents were displaced from their home for a month, and when FEMA and the insurance adjusters came in, the craziness that ensued at scale it's just mind-boggling. So, look, you've got 80% of Altadena residents displaced as of 3 months ago, still, and that was 10 months after the fire. Or 9 months after the fire. It took 7 months just to clean up the damage. This is an existential impact, a long-term recovery. A year in, I think I saw a number that something like only 7 houses had been rebuilt thus far. So 13,000 destroyed, 7 rebuilt. That's where we are today.
Okay, and what we know at this point, apparently a decommissioned power line triggered this fire. And I want to point that out because it was not arson, unlike the horrific Palisades fire that was deliberately set. So let's talk about climate change, how this is affecting the situations like we're talking about now, that these mega fires are spawned, and you just simply can't control them.
Yeah, and that's the underlying two issues are you've got a drier region because of climate change, drier, hotter. And I say this, they just had atmospheric rivers there. Doesn't mean it doesn't rain. It does, but overwhelmingly, it is a dry region. The other thing you have is you've got an infrastructure that sparks. And we've known about this for several decades. And societally, we don't want to pay for what it's going to cost to solve that problem, which is an enormous amount of money. So we've had a stalemate between legislature, regulators, the utility companies across California and around the country, and the ratepayer or taxpayer who's going to have to share the cost of this. Nobody wants to get the more expensive bill, but then when this happens, this is way worse. So we're all going to have to come together to figure out how to deal with this, because the reality is this is not slowing down. It's only going to get worse in the short term. So our preparedness needs to get better.
What about affected businesses? Have they come back at all? And really, what are the biggest financial challenges during these reconstruction efforts, for lack of a better term?
Well, you hit the nail on the head with the example of the people that out there. Is, if I'm a local business and I'm in that area, but nobody's in their homes and nobody has disposable income, does it really matter if my business is back? I get asked this question all the time by people: is my house going to be okay from a flood or a fire? The question you have to ask is my community going to be okay? Because even if your house somehow miraculously evades these kinds of disasters, if your community is leveled, it really doesn't matter. And this is the piece: is 3/4 of the affected businesses and 3/4 of the job losses, are in the Eaton area, and likely nowhere near getting back to where they were before the fire.
Let's talk about the insurance industry and the claims, the way it is shaping the recovery process for businesses and homes. And we heard we've heard from some people that their insurance was canceled. And that's not just California. It's going on in Florida. It's going on in Louisiana. And these companies that have been raking in profits for years and years and years now say, look, this is a tinderbox. We don't want anything to do with it. So what does that do moving forward?
Well, this trend started in 1992 when Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida, and the insurance industry said we want nothing to do with providing insurance to homes here because they were leveled at a scale that went beyond Eaton, and they couldn't handle it. And they just said, we're done with this. And the state of Florida had to stand up citizens, which is now what you use to insure for wind in Florida. There is really very little private sector wind insurance here. I had the California Insurance Commissioner about 8 or 9 years ago on a program that I hosted. It was the then commissioner. And I was already hearing at that point in time about the challenges they were having in keeping the fire insurance industry there and how they were having to tie that to the ability of those insurers to insure other things as a way to keep them in the region.
Right.
That is only getting more difficult.